US media is reporting that former Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang is now working in a lowly publishing job, quoting former US officials. Once Beijing's ambassador to Washington, Qin was seen as a Xi Jinping loyalist, but disappeared from public view in summer 2023, just 5 months after being named foreign minister. He was later formally removed from the position and had not been heard from since. This once again raises the spectre of high-ranking Communist Party officials disappearing under Xi Jinping. And for more on this, I can bring in Jean-Philippe Béja, political scientist and researcher emeritus at the CNRS and the Centre for International Studies and Research in Paris. Good morning, Jean-Philippe Béja. This appears to be a sharp fall from grace for the once favoured Qin Gang, but he does appear to be still at liberty. So what can we make of this?
Well, it's very difficult to know. First of all, we're not absolutely sure that he is working at this publishing house. But on the other hand, disappearances are something quite common in China. There are under Mao, many leaders disappeared, and then it was announced that they had been either jailed or executed. But no one did know about them at that time because the West wasn't interested. Then it happened very often to dissidents, people who are usually human rights lawyers, for example, and other political dissidents very often disappear, and then they reappear a few months later, and they are submitted to trial. And the last thing, which has been quite frequent under Xi Jinping, are Communist Party leading cadres who are put under what's called shuanggui, which is a parallel justice system of the Communist Party. Usually they disappear for a few months, and then the piece of news appears to say that they have made serious violation of discipline. Then they they go back to the Department of Justice, and they're tried under the normal justice system, and are usually sentenced to either a life imprisonment or very heavy prison sentences. We thought that it might happen with Qin Gang. Apparently, this is not the case. But it tells a lot about the absence of transparency of the Communist Party system under Xi Jinping.
And as you said, disappearances of high-ranking party officials, it goes back decades in China, but Xi Jinping himself has been particularly ruthless in eliminating people that he sees as rivals in his rise to power and maintaining power. But Qin was somebody who was in his favour, which was much to the annoyance of other cadres in the party. Is this move one of Xi Jinping's himself, or do you think it might have been imposed by outer forces within the security state?
Well, this is very difficult to say, because we don't have any reliable information on the disappearance of Qin Gang. It was a surprise because he was promoted in early 2023 and then disappeared 5 months later, whereas he had been on a helicopter career. So, of course, we all thought that maybe it was imposed by the inner party struggle. This is very difficult to decide. So if Qin Gang is actually working in a publishing house, it might be that he has been protected by the higher ranking, by the leadership of the party, because there were many rumors to say that he had a mistress in the United States, that he had been corrupted. In this case, he would have been shuanggui and then sentenced to a life sentence. But this is not the case. So it's very difficult. Of course, although Xi Jinping appears to be in command completely, there are inner struggles inside the party. And we might know in a few months that the Qin Gang affair was more complicated than we thought.
And Qin Gang, of course, a former Chinese ambassador to Washington, he was one of the earliest examples of China's aggressive so-called wolf warrior diplomacy. But that has since been scaled back a little bit by Beijing. Is this also a suggestion that cleaving too close to a party directive can ultimately be costly if the line later changes?
Well, this is very difficult to say because, the relationship with the United States have, in fact, been better since last year, but I'm not sure it's linked to Qin Gang. And I'm not sure that the disappearance of Qin Gang is a sign of more opening towards the United States. Actually, it would be the contrary, because the fate of Qin Gang shows that the system is even more opaque than ever. So I'm not sure this is a very good signal sent to the United States. If you can't really understand what's happening in your partner's politics, it's very difficult to have a more a more healthy relationship with it. So I think there are many factors which explain why the Chinese scaled back their discourse about the United States, but I don't think it has to do very much with Qin Gang.
The Chinese Communist Party is pretty much governed by a paranoid style. There are, as we mentioned, as of the long history of high-ranking party members disappearing, being arrested, being tried, and so on. Also, Xi Jinping's long-standing anti-corruption drives has eliminated a number of people, and there have been arrests and disappearances of people in civil society, including very, very low-ranking protesters during the COVID protests in Shanghai. Do you think that this style that dominates the Communist Party, is it ultimately damaging to both the party and China as a whole?
Well, of course, you could say that it is damaging on the long run, but immediately it's a very handy way to get rid of your would-be opponents. Since Xi Jinping has come to power in 2012, there have been much more crackdowns on civil society, and also, as you said, on corruption inside the party, which means also on Xi Jinping's eventual rivals. So in the long run, I'm sure it is damaging not only to the party, but of course to the whole of China. But for the moment, we don't see any light, any way of going out of this kind of exercise of power. Xi Jinping's power is threatened by various contradictions. Of course, we don't know much about the party's inner struggle, but history shows that there have always been factions fighting for power. So the response of Xi Jinping is having a crackdown and having everybody obey his rule. Apparently, this works, but it works until we'll know that something else has happened and that an opposition might be developing inside the party. But this is still very opaque, and no one dares show its opposition to the great leader.
Thank you very much for that. Jean-Philippe Béja of the CNRS and Sciences-Po in Paris.